Now, joining me now to continue the conversation, Lahnee Chen, former policy director for Mitt Romney's presidential campaign and a Hoover Institution senior fellow at Stanford University. Lahnee, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure, Blake. Great to be with you.
Yeah, so I think it's important to point out that the president right now is suggesting that this is going to happen on Tuesday. You heard from the attorney basically saying, and he's told NewsNation today that he doesn't know if anything will happen on Tuesday. If this does happen, if the former president is indicted and if he is arrested, what do you think the greater fallout is after that?
Well, you know, we got to remember that this is all happening in the midst of a presidential campaign. Yeah. You have a candidacy for the presidency of the United States, somebody who obviously is very polarizing. A lot of people who support President Trump undoubtedly will see this as a call to further support him. I think the former president, is right in the sense that those who support him will only support him more strongly if he is in fact arrested. The reality is that there is a certain floor below which his numbers will not drop. Now, the bigger question, of course, is how far that ceiling comes down. We know that he's got a certain floor. He's also got a ceiling. And the reality is that if he is arrested, it is going to compromise his ability, in my view, to gain broader support, even within the Republican Party. But certainly, were he to become the Republican nominee, I think it would be highly damaging to Republican efforts to recapture the White House next year. So there are grave political implications for Republicans, in my view, not just for Donald Trump himself.
Here was Lindsey Graham earlier today picking up on this point. Let's listen and then talk on the other side.
Here's what I think is going to happen. The prosecutor in New York has done more to help Donald Trump get elected president than any single person in America today.
Is that, I mean, I know we just sort of talked about it, but I mean, you know, Lindsey Graham just sort of laid out what a lot of people are thinking, that this might just help the president in a Republican primary.
Yeah, well, I think in a Republican primary, there's a reasonable argument to be made that it further entrenches his support with, you know, let's just call it some percentage of Republicans who believe very strongly that Donald Trump is the right candidate. They have always supported him. They will always support him. I do think it's an open question whether it allows him to capture the majority of Republican voters in support in a primary. I think, you know, he gets a decent chunk. I do think that actually being arrested probably ends up hurting him with some percentage of Republicans. Now, the issue is going to be, is that enough? Is that a high enough percentage that it prevents him from getting the nomination? Look, I think the assumption amongst many people looking at this primary right now is that it's Donald Trump's to lose. Yeah. I don't believe that getting arrested compromises that significantly. I do think it compromises, to be clear, his ability to be elected president. And I think that's the bigger concern that Republicans have to look at. If the goal is to recapture the White House in 2024, Donald Trump probably is not the vessel through which that happens.
Two people who were largely quiet on the issue today, Ron DeSantis and President Joe Biden. Do you think they just sit back and let this play out and sort of like not touch it and just say, you know, and just sort of see how it unfolds?
Yeah, I mean, Blake, I think that's right. I think if you're Ron DeSantis, you are the principal opponent. You're the principal alternative to Donald Trump. People already know that. You've already got the inside lane, the inside track on that. Really, there's not a whole lot you can say one way or the other. It's certainly not until this plays itself out a little bit more. I think Joe Biden is just waiting to see, again, how this plays out, to see how he responds, what he says. Look, I've always believed that the only person that Donald Trump can really beat is Joe Biden, and the only person Joe Biden can beat is Donald Trump. So they kind of need each other in some ways. So I don't think that Joe Biden is particularly interested in trying to knife Donald Trump right now while he's still got to make his way through a primary. I think Joe Biden would be delighted to see Donald Trump on the other side of the primary in the same way that I think Donald Trump would love to run against Joe Biden. So the political dynamic here is interesting in that sense.
Interesting is one way to put it. Lahnee Chen, got to leave it there. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.